Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to Sir Hunt on X on the 17th of November, 2025. Less than a little more than a week away from Turkey Day and Thanksgiving here in the States. Always a good food, always good football during that time of year. Before I proceed, just want to give a huge shout out to those who are at B. Cozell, a top flight Mexican restaurant over there in Newport, Kentucky, who had me and my significant other over there for such good dinner, unique atmosphere. And yes, I will bring the show over there at some point. They wanted me to tonight. I couldn't do it for various reasons, but I will do it at some other time. But I had a lot of fun from before I got to the show tonight, as those of you who saw it. Lots of places to tour and got a chance to enjoy myself before I came on stage here tonight. And it's just a wonderful day all around. Decent weather in the 50s out in the greater Cincinnati, northern Kentucky area. And if you're not enjoying it, shame on you because you're missing out. So I'll be down there with that good food. That chicken quesadilla was just absolutely awesome. Just wanted to touch on that for you guys over there listening. As I would say, muchos gracias to all those over there at that restaurant who's actually watching tonight, believe it or not. Hope everyone had themselves a wonderful day and a wonderful weekend. It is Victory Monday for those who celebrate. I'm going to go get right down to it here real quick. Lots to get to, but I'm going to flip the script a little bit because we know what happened in Cincinnati, and the news have just broke about maybe an hour and a half ago. And there's a lot to shred. And now it's time. It's the news that broke after what took place yesterday at Pittsburgh with Jamar Chase and Jalen Ramsey with that incident. And the NFL put the one-game suspension on Jamar Chase, rightfully so. I mean, it's a no-brainer. I mean, you spit on a guy, you're going to get suspended, okay? I'll touch on that part in a second. But I gotta break a lot of this down because we have, once again, the cowardice that is known as Cincinnati Bengals fans and the Cincinnati media showing their true colors at a whole new level. And now it's time to just put this thing to pasture and show the whole world what these cowards are made of. Back in 2015, when these same two teams met, and a wild card game with these two teams in Paul Brown Stadium. Everybody knows those the game, the Bengals and Steelers side, and for those who will watch it, it was the game, the Vontaze Burfict whack Antonio Brown upside the head game, the playoff game that spearheaded a lot of crazy stuff. And there's also a lot of crazy stuff before, during, and after that game. And of course, all this the taunts from both full bases. It's rivalry week. What do you expect? But some of it got super personal during that game where Bengals fans showing their cowardice and their heartless true colors again, throwing debris at Ben Roethlisberger, the quarterback of the Pittsburgh Steelers, after he's taken off the field. The Bengals fans showing their cowardice, cheering the Ben Roethlisberger injury. Now, I get it. Part of it is because of Ben Roethlisberger's off-the-field transgressions. But I'll tell you this much. I know Steelers fans who never dug Ben Roethlisberger off the field for those reasons, so Bengals fans lost room to speak. They were cheering in their cheer injury. They were also throwing things at Ben Roethlisberger as he was leaving. And, of course, we know what happened with the game. The Vontaze Burfict whack Antonio Brown upside the head. And the cowardice of Bengals fans started there. And it was after that game, the behaviors were through the roof, encouraging violence in and out of the stadium, during and after the ball game. I won't go into the details of what happened after the ball game. Anybody can Google that, and you're more than welcome to come to me about it, and I'll gladly answer questions for anyone who has questions, who wants to ask about it. And it continued on from there all the way through what took place 4 years ago in the AFC Championship game in the loss of Kansas City, where they used every excuse in the book there to try and say that they were victimized by the NFL, when the fact was their so-called $300 million quarterback threw 2 intentional interceptions, and they resorted to cowardice, slandering Chiefs fans, and slandering Ravens fans in person and on social media. And of course, what happens after that? Lamar Jackson comes back, and the Bengals haven't been able to beat Lamar Jackson since. And the Bengals fans, once again, showing their cowardice, use every excuse in the book. Fast forward to a game, regular season game, last season in Kansas City, week 2. And this is where everything really unraveled, not just for the Bengals fans because of their cowardice, but also Jamar Chase, which leads to what happened yesterday. I'll touch on that here in a second. Jamar Chase was basically matched up one-on-one with a standout cornerback from Kansas City named Trent McDuffie. Trent McDuffie basically had him on lockdown for the entire game. And it was at a play in the middle of it where Jamar Chase thought he was roughed up or horse-collared or whatever the heck he wanted to say, asked for a flag, and basically was screaming verbal insults to an official, which got him a personal foul. And the Bengals fans show their cowardice on the play in the end of the game where DeJesus-Duran Anthony clearly pass interfered Rashee Rice on the pass that set up the game-winning field goal as time expired. And the Bengals fans and their cowardice showed there once again. Now it takes, why I bring all that? Because I've seen firsthand what these guys were made of. And everybody, including the Steelers and the AFC North fan bases, are seeing it right here with this particular incident. Look, I thought, like some of you guys did, I thought Jamar Chase sort of, back up. I thought Jalen Ramsey had hits that were, I'll say, sort of on the line. I'm not going to say they were over, but we know how the NFL rules are today. I get it. But when you're backing a man who's spitting on another man, the way Jamar Chase intentionally did to Jalen Ramsey yesterday, and it was blatant. I mean, I don't want to hear it. It was blatant. You're just as worse of a human being as that person is. And we saw it earlier this year when Jalen Carter did it to Dak Prescott. And Eagles fans are trying to defend him for that. I said the same thing with Eagles fans. They're heartless human beings, just terrible human beings like Jalen Carter. And the same goes for Bengals fans when it comes to defending Jamar Chase in this incident. I mean, they're heartless. They're cowardly. They're just all around bad people standing up for an individual who sunk to the depths of humanity on the field yesterday. And the Bengals fans and the Cincinnati media hit their lows as people joining him. That's the issue. And it's something that's been coming on for the last several years, tracing back to when these two teams met in that playoff loss in Cincinnati in 2015. As I said, Google how the Bengals fans carried themselves on that night. It says tons when you have the NFL Man of the Year last year and Cam Hayward blunt saying, you do that, you don't have a place in the NFL. When something like that comes out of the mouth of a guy like Cam Hayward, who was a rightful NFL Man of the Year last season, the conversation is over. Period. And now we have Bengals fans resorting to cowardice for the second time after a game against Pittsburgh, like they did in Week 10, acting like, the Steelers got gift wrapped to win, when basically what happened was nobody showed up, and the Bengals got punked in Pittsburgh. And they're acting like getting a split against the Steelers was their whatever the word they want to use. I'm not going to use it because it's words that includes exclamatories I won't get into. I know Steelers fans who said the Bengals would sweep the Steelers this season. If anything, the Bengals underachieved. The Bengals fans underachieved because you got a split. I know some Steelers fans who legitimately thought going into this game yesterday that the Bengals would win and complete the sweep. I didn't think so. But we have the cowardice once again of the Bengals fans revealing themselves as just genuinely bad people. Same with the members of the Cincinnati media. And their true colors as human beings come out when you're defending a man spitting on another man, as of what happened yesterday in Pittsburgh. And when you do that, your true colors as a person come out, and it's the end for you. I knew this end was going to come since the last decade, especially how you carried yourselves after getting lost at Kansas City, the 2022 AFC title game. From there to now, I can point to about 15 to 20 other things. I'll do that on another show this week. I'll save it for it. But your true colors have officially come out. And whatever happens to you, I'm not going to feel sorry for you. How the hell would you defend someone spitting on another man? How do you do that? Are you trying to use what Jalen Ramsey did as a cop out? What Jalen Ramsey did, you want to say Jalen Ramsey toyed with the rules? I get it. I get it. I mean, what Jalen Ramsey did, that's in the football games. I mean, do I think some of those should have been flagged? Maybe. But it's one thing to toe the line on a bad hit, but it's another thing to blatantly spit on another human being and to be caught on camera like that and to defend it the way the cowardice of the Bengals fans and the Cincinnati media have been from the time it happened to today. And there are people who are saying the one-game suspension is unjust. Actually, I can tell you the one-game suspension I think might be too soft because that was intentional and with malicious and blatant intent by Ja'Marr Chase. And we've seen it, and it's not the first time we wrote it with this. Remember what happened 3 years ago in the season opener against Pittsburgh, where apparently he, dislodged a mouthpiece of Minkah Fitzpatrick and gave him the infamous double middle finger. It was the photo that went viral. And of course, I mentioned last year in the game at Kansas City, he got the clamps put on him by Trent McDuffie, and he cried to the referee about it. And not to mention, 3 years ago, there was a game in Baltimore on national TV where because he couldn't get a touchdown, he threw his helmet across the sidelines when he was off. And the Bengals decided to make a play for him so he can get a touchdown just to put window dressing on a stat sheet. Ja'Marr Chase is he gets a pound for pound, a top 15 overall player in the NFL. He is. There's no denying that. Nobody can dispute that. Anyone wants to fight it? I mean, I'll go to bat for him for that. But when you resort to what took place yesterday with him to Jalen Ramsey, and you're trying to defend it, it says about more of you as a heartless and degrading human being at the end of the day. And now the Bengals fan base, who have already had a boatload of degrading human beings. We talk about Zim, the drug dealer over the Rhine, to Drew Garrison, to the captain, to Sarah Elise, to the captain's wife, to Bridget J., to even Kelsey Conway, among many others, and even James Rapian, who's an arrogant coward, and Chris Rowling, among the many names and many more. All of you guys revealed your true colors as cowards at the end of the day, and there's no turning back. You cannot turn back after this one because you just set the precedent. You just set the precedent to hit the lows I never thought I would see any fan base do. And this is a guy who went into my boxing years, saw a lot of dirtbags there, and I think I can find a way to get worse than that. And there was a lot of dirtbags in the fight game. You guys find a way to be worse than that. To defend a man who spit it on another man and blatantly defend it says it all. The best thing for Ja'Marr Chase was Jalen Ramsey. Can you imagine with someone like Ray Lewis or James Harrison or even a guy like Mike Singletary or Lawrence Taylor? He did that too. That guy's face would be recognizable the next day. I mean, the only thing Jalen Ramsey didn't do wrong was, beat him up even more. And everybody on the defensive side of the Steelers should have just ganked him down 11-1 and just beat him to a pulp. He should have gotten that. That was just disgusting. And it's even more disgusting. We had cowards in the Bengals fan base, the Bengals content creators, and the Cincinnati media defending what Ja'Marr Chase did. You defend a man who spit on another man, your true colors come out, and there's no more turning back. It's plain and simple. It's degrading. It's insulting. It's pathetic. It was cowardly, and it was heartless, and it says a lot about the Ja'Marr Chase and the Bengals fans and the Cincinnati media. You guys are just find ways to crash worse than Enron. I don't think Enron had anything like this. I mean, yes, Enron did all their stupid stuff in the business sector, and we know what happened there. But for you guys to resort to defending a man who spit on another man as viciously and as maliciously as you guys did, it says a lot about you guys at the end of the day. That's all that has to be said. I heard. We had this conversation after week one when Jalen Carter did it to Dak Prescott. And of course, the NFL had this odd ruling, which is another subject. I'm not even going to get into it. But we're having this conversation again, and for this to happen, and to have an entire city, from the Bengals fans to the Cincinnati media, defend it, we're seeing just how grossly pathetic of a human race Bengals fans and Cincinnati media have become. And it's pathetic, it's sad, and it's gross. I can't defend it no matter how hard you're going to try me to. I mean, do I cheer for the Bengals when they play the Steelers? Of course. I've been a fan since '85. Am I going to defend a guy who spit on another man, regardless of who it is? No, I can't, because I wouldn't have a leg to stand on. And now they try to spin it off as if it didn't happen. And then we have a representative from Fox 19 post a 4K version of the video, and the Bengals fans continue to show their cowardice, calling this thing AI. It's not. Have you guys even seen what 4K video is? I don't even think these cowards know what 4K video is. And because of it, they make these egregious, cowardly, despicable, and disgusting claims the way they have. When you talk about saying that was AI when it was a 4K video and it was clear as day what was done. And now Bengals fans want this individual not affiliated with this city. It has nothing to do with who he got. I mean, if the guy worked for ESPN or USA Today or anybody, it would be Cincinnati, Pittsburgh, Baltimore, Buffalo, Seattle, Washington, San Francisco, or even another planet or another country. It doesn't matter. The point is, Ja'Marr Chase, did a disgusting thing, spitting on another man. It doesn't matter who recorded it or where it was coming from. The incident was done, and that was the end of the story. And the suspension was rightfully just. I could probably say it was too soft because character it's almost a lost art everywhere in this human life. We all know this. I mean, it is. Character is completely lost. And you know where you want to talk about loss of character? Go to the Bengals fans and the Cincinnati media where you talk about defending a spitting incident. No, it's not just football. When you spit on someone like that, and I always talk about gloves off. Somebody did that to me. The gloves will be coming off, and somebody's going to be winding up in a wheelchair. You don't know me like that. And it's an act of cowardice. It's an act of despicable, criminal, and insulting behavior. And if you're tolerating it, it says a lot about you at the end of the day. End of story. I'll be touching more on this down the line. Now, they're calling for Jalen Ramsey to be suspended, which I think that might eventually happen because he threw a punch. Maybe the one thing Jalen Ramsey didn't do was throw more punches or rip Ja'Marr Chase's helmet off and bash him upside the head the way Myles Garrett did to Mason Rudolph several years back, because that was what was deserved. The thing about this, when you and let me trace a couple steps before I proceed because I lost my thought for a quick second. When you have a player in the top 10 of the NFL pound for pound as this guy is, and you wear the C on your jersey the way he does, that being Ja'Marr Chase, and you resort to this, what does it say about the team? What does it say about the organization at the end of the day? And there's a lot of enabling and a lot of coddling going on, and that should have been stopped a long time ago. But the problem is, we had the cowards known as Bengals fans, the cowards known as Cincinnati media, who kept pushing and pushing and pushing for such degrading behavior from the players and the fans. And now it just reared its ugly head. You can blame Zach Taylor all you want. You can blame Zach Taylor all you want. Zach Taylor, they never told Ja'Marr Chase to go spit on Jalen Ramsey. And you guys called Zach Taylor a dry snitch. Newsflash. Video was there. What do you expect the guy to do? They tried to go to bat for a guy when the video evidence was proved it. I mean, it was proven. It was proven. And you guys called the whole thing a minor incident. Ask Eagles fans about how Jalen Carter was getting it for weeks after what he did to Dak Prescott in the season opener, because he was getting it from every angle. And it's even worse when this happens, and it's double worse when you have a fan base like the Bengals fans and the Cincinnati media who was defending it. Their true colors came out as heartless human beings who are the biggest group of scumbags and cowards at the moment because of it. Just an awful day all around. And oh, by the way, that had no impact on what happened in that game because the Bengals just got pumped. That's plain and simple. I'm not going to go into the details of the game because the Bengals season, you might as well wrap it. Steelers just hanging on a little bit for the AFC North title, which I'll touch on Baltimore here in a second. Now I'm going to go to my NFL previews. But to defend a man who's with such a despicable and criminal act, the way that Ja'Marr Chase did earlier this year, you just lost all credibility to talk about anything in any walks of life. Not just the Bengals, or not just Cincinnati sports, or not just sports. Anything in all walks of life, because you endorse a man spitting on another man in one of the most despicable acts ever. Says a lot about you guys at the end of the day. My point was proven a long time ago, and I guess I had to put the final nail in it. If anybody wants to talk to me about it, and I don't care what fan base is, you want to talk to me about it, I'm here. I'm not going anywhere. There's a reason why I'm here, and 90% of those cowards are over there, and there's a reason for it. Case closed. I feel like I have to flip the switch a little bit. I mean, I could dig more if people want me to, but as I said, you defend a man who's spitting on another man, you're a coward. Jamar Chase showed he was a coward what he did to Jalen Ramsey, but the Bengals fans and Cincinnati media have officially become the biggest group of cowards walking God's green earth, defending him and defending this. Now to a little lighter stuff, and let's get to the week that was week 11 of the NFL season. I'm going to touch on some of the bigger games because I have a historical boxing event I got to touch on at the end of the show. It is, of course, Buffalo over Tampa Bay yesterday. Actually, I was one of the ones who thought Tampa Bay would do it. I'll admit I was wrong. Sorry to all my Bills fans. I mean, if you want to come at me, have at it. I'll take it. I'll take the L myself. But kudos to you guys. Josh Allen showed why he was the MVP. Put on that Superman cape in the second half to go for 6 touchdowns, 3 passing and 3 rushing, just to carry a Tampa Bay team whose offense played about as best you possibly could. It was a no-show by the Buccaneers defense. Baker Mayfield struggled in the second half. But Sean Tucker for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, if you had him on your fantasy, you lucked out. My goodness. 106 yards and 2 touchdowns. Even the 40-yarder at the end of the half where he took it to the house, it wasn't even touched. I mean, nice gem over there for Tampa Bay. Did all they could. But Josh Allen showed why he's the MVP, and his name is probably back in the MVP conversation after this because of what he did. But kudos to Buffalo. I'll admit I was wrong when I picked Tampa, but, much love. I love the hell out of Josh Allen. Showed the world why he was an MVP last year and probably could win it again this year. So Tampa Bay's going to be fine. They're still going to win the South. No one's still buying the Carolina bandwagon yet, although they had a nice, impressive win over Atlanta in overtime. But they'll be fine also. I mean, they're going to get key pieces back hopefully soon because Baker Mayfield, even though he had nice passes to Cade Otton and Emeka Ibuka, misses Mike Evans. It's plain and simple. But that defense has to step up and step up soon. And of course, it was the Packers over the Giants. Everyone pegged Green Bay as the Super Bowl favorite after they demolished Detroit week 1. Maybe some flaws were starting to get more exposed as the season has gone on with this team and this defense. And you're talking about a kicker who missed 2 extra points in Lucas Havrizik, and he almost single-handedly cost him this game. But I'll give it this. The offense came forward big time as we talk about getting in the red zone, 4 red zone turnovers and going 7 for 11 on 3rd down. And an offense that people had criticized Matt LaFleur when you talk about his style of coaching. I mean, I understand it. I have a couple real close Green Bay fans who told me the same thing. They're not hit with Matt LaFleur, but, it is what it is at this point. The defense, who was supposed to be a strong suit that was top 10 last season, started to show some cracks. I mean, they let Jameis Winston and Tyrone Tracy do whatever they want for the most part until Jameis Winston on the intentional interception in the 4th quarter. Now, that's what you're going to get with Jameis Winston. I mean, you get a lot of highlights. You get the excitement. I mean, you get the good speeches. I mean, he has a lot of great speeches. We saw that when he was in Cleveland when they beat Pittsburgh on that Thursday nighter last season in the snow game. But let me remind you, when he was in Tampa Bay, he had a season where he threw 30 touchdowns and 30 interceptions. That's the wild ride you're going to get with Jameis Winston, and it showed here again with that intentional interception in the 4th quarter. But it was a must-win for Green Bay to try and stay in the pack because with the Bears and the Lions in the NFC North and Green Bay, who was pegged as a favorite, a potential NFC favorite, who saw the season sort of slipping away a little bit, but got to win. But there's also work to be done. And nobody should be resting on their laurels. Just be happy you got to win and you get out of New York. That's all you can hope for right now. And speaking of the NFC North, it was Chicago over Minnesota in a bit of a stunner because I thought Minnesota would, find a way to win this. But J.J. McCarthy was so sporadic So up and down. I'm not sure you can go up and down on a roller coaster more than how J.J. McCarthy played yesterday. Yeah, he had a great go-ahead touchdown drive. We went 6 for 8 in the fourth quarter, but he only completed 50% of his passes overall. And we talk about Chicago. Might be time to talk about Ben Johnson in the Coach of the Year conversation. When you think about what they've done so far, finding ways to win. And after the go-ahead touchdown, you had, of course, the 50-plus yarder by Esteban DeJesus to set up the game-winning field goal by the kicker. And last year, these are the games that the Bears lost. There's a bit of a culture shift going on in Chicago a little bit. I'm not ready to go as far as some people are yet. A lot of them right now are saying they're going to win the North. Not won't go that far yet because they haven't touched the North yet. Remember, they're 1-2 in the division still, lost to Minnesota and Detroit, and they haven't touched Green Bay yet, and they still have one more home game against Detroit, still plenty of time. But they're trending in the right direction. They have stuff going good, and you have to tip your hat off to Ben Johnson because a culture shift is coming, and Caleb Williams starting to become a decent quarterback. Still, we'll find out in due time how much good he can be. But remember, the Bears made the investment to draft this guy number 1 overall. And for number 1 overall quarterback, you probably expected better. But right now, Ben Johnson has him going in the right direction, and you got to have to give him that. So, big road win by Chicago over Minnesota after Minnesota beat them on their turf earlier in the season. And Chicago is now back in the mix and in the conversation. The NFC North is going to be a wild race. I wouldn't be surprised if all 4 teams finish 500 or better. I know Minnesota, I think, is what 4-6, 4-5 or 4-6 or something like that. I don't remember, but that's how how good the NFC North is. Lots of football still left to be played, but in my opinion, it's still anybody's division. Lots of work needs to be done by all 4 teams, but tough division. We'll see what happens in the end. And we talk about the NFC North. Of course, a hot topic is what took place in Philadelphia last night with the Eagles defense mucking it up and just putting the clamps on the Detroit offense. Howie Roseman does it again. He got Jalen Phillips from Miami, and he made the impact immediately. And even though they only sacked Jared Goff twice, the Eagles defense did everything in the book to make life terrible for him, and they did it. But the bigger story here, actually, there's 2 of them. The first one is Dan Campbell going for 4th downs every time, going 0 for 5 on 4th downs. And, of course, the PI by Rocky Ya-Sin at the end, which has everyone in ups and arms. I'll go back. I'll touch on that here in a second. Let's talk about this thought of going 0 for 5 here on 4th downs. Anybody remember what happened 2 years ago in the NFC title game when Detroit was in San Francisco? And there was 2 questionable 4th down attempts by Dan Campbell. I get it. You want to play to win, and your guy wants to go get it. That's how Dan Campbell is. Yes, I get it. I understand it wholeheartedly. But it's one thing to go 0 for 1 or 0 for 2. But when you go 0 for 5 on 4th downs, and basically all the plays, I've seen the plays, all 5 plays, I don't even know what was being called or who was running them. But to go 0 for 5 on 4th downs, it's a bit of an eyebrow raiser. And I don't like to, and people, I know even some Lions fans want to question it. I understand it. And I know that's how Dan Campbell rolls. 0 for 5, I don't know. It comes a time, I don't want to point the word stupid to anyone, especially a guy like Dan Campbell, who just turned the Detroit around and made a respectable team in the NFC at the very least. But 0 for 5 on 4th downs, there has to be some questions that have to be answered, legitimately answered, as to what the guy is thinking, going for it on every single 4th down. Yeah, 0 for 1 or 0 for 2 is one thing, like what happened in San Francisco 2 years ago in that NFC title game. But 0 for 5 calls for some questions. It's one thing if you've got one or two of those 4th downs, it'd be understandable. But to go 0 for 5 on 4th downs and the type of plays that were called and the personnel that was called, there's a lot of questions that need to be answered in Detroit. And that's a tough loss for that team. And who's rolling on offense, going against a Philly team who was, a lot of people didn't know what they would have going in. And the Philly defense just stepped it up and made life terrible for that offense. Jared Goff completed, I think, like only 38% of his passes, and it was just terrible. But Philly, showed why they're a top defense in the NFL. They have the personnel for it, and they put the clamps on a hot offense. Got to give them that. I mean, maybe in the case in those 4 downs, Dan Campbell overthinking and outthinking himself, which I know at times he has a tendency to do, like he did in that NFC title game in San Francisco 2 years ago. But at some point, someone needs to grab this guy and say, chill out a little bit. I mean, it's not one thing to go 0 for 1 or 0 for 2, but to go 0 for 5 with the personnel and the play calling you had at that game, it raises questions. Dan Campbell probably outcoached himself every time. Now, of course, everyone's going to throw the hush puss on the missed pass interference and the referees. I've said it before. That's not the reason why Detroit lost the game. It's because they only scored 9 points. That's the only reason why they lost the game. I've said this before. Refereeing this year has been awful. Yes, I agree. I concur 100%. Refereeing has been terrible across the board. But they're not. Good teams find a way to win. Bad teams find a way to lose. And the inexcusable sorry teams, like the disgusting fans called Bengals fans and Cincinnati media, use them as an excuse for why they're just terrible. That's how it is. Yes, they've made bad calls all over the place. Everybody's going to throw this. There's this perception that people are going to say they're biased toward a certain team or a certain, historical tradition of a franchise. I understand it, but you need more details to show me than just YouTube footage or screenshots or pictures, because that's not going to be good enough. Because it's been bad across the board. Yes, I agree. There's no denying it. It was, and it has been. But let's not act like there's other ways you can win with the bad calls, because there is. Detroit only scored 9 points last night. In today's NFL, you're beating nobody scoring 9 points. And that's something everyone misses. And not because of that call, which was a bad missed call. I admit it was a bad missed call, but it wasn't the reason the Detroit Lions lost. It's because they only scored 9 points against the Philadelphia defense. And that's something that requires an explanation after how Detroit has rolled teams scoring 30, 40, and 50 plus. They just crapped the bed last night. Now we go on to what took place in Denver. And there's some questions that need to be asked on this one. It is the Broncos beating the Chiefs in a tough AFC West duel. I mean, a terrific game all the way around. Question I have is, who's calling the play calls for the Kansas City Chiefs? Because there's some play calls, especially on offense, and some of the schemes on defense that raises a lot of questions. And it certainly is going to have some questions. I know some Chiefs fans are already asking it, who I love and respect the hell out of. And you guys have every right to complain about it, because some of the plays, I don't know what you guys were even running. The fact you guys even had a 19-16 lead was a miracle. But the problem was, we had the 19-16 lead. You couldn't find a play to put it away. And that's where it bit you in the end. And those are the kind of games historically during this Chiefs run, they've made the right plays and found a way to win. Yesterday, they didn't. Yes, Denver's front seven, that defense is as nasty as anyone, and they did all they could to disrupt Patrick Mahomes. Yes, I concur with that. But somebody explain to me how in the world, when you have the kind of personnel and as Kansas does, we talk about Patrick Mahomes and those wide receivers, Xavier Worthy and Rashid Rice, and you run the plays that you do. And not only that, you allow Bo Nix to go off in the second half and go for 62 yards in the game-winning drive when everyone has roasted Bo Nix all season long and that Denver offense. And you guys, in the 3 and outs after you took the lead with some questionable play calling, how does a team with a championship DNA like that allow that to happen? Yes, they're upset, rightfully so. Denver probably sealed the AFC West on that game last night. Kudos to them. But moving forward, maybe, and I'll try to say this without getting the Chiefs fans mad at me. I'll try to say this respectfully. When you have the championship run that you have, you want to keep that core together. Maybe you had some guys on that team during that run, you might have kept a year too long, and it's starting to show. It happens all the time with championship teams. I mean, don't get me wrong. Not just you guys. It's happened all the championship teams and all team sports. I see it. I see it and I understand it, because that is how the NFL and championship level works. Maybe you held on to this team too long, maybe 1 year too long, because a serious retooling is probably going to have to be done this offseason, regardless of result. Now, do I think they make the playoffs? Yes, they're going to make the playoffs. After Indy this week, schedule gets a little light in their favor. I can't see them missing the playoffs. They're going to make the playoffs unless something catastrophic happens. But moving forward, regardless of what happens after this season, even if you win this, even theoretically win the Super Bowl, which is possible, you still have your foundation with Andy Reid and Patrick Mahomes. Might be time for a serious retooling and a different change of philosophy, because I think you held onto the team maybe a year too long. And it's starting to show a little bit. Because games like yesterday are the ones you historically win. This year, you're 0-5 in one-score games, and these are the kind of games during this run you had over the last 6-7 years, you find ways to win. Maybe just because you held on this team a year too long. But in the end, just for this season, I think you'll eventually be fine. You'll be in the playoffs. No one's to say they're not going to be in the playoffs. I think it's ignorant at this point, because still lots of games to be played. There's only a game back of the last wild card spots. And consider one of those is the Jacksonville Jag frauds who find a way to self-destruct down the line. That's all you need to know. Chiefs will be fine, but Denver, you have arrived. You're going to win the division, and that defense will take you places. But you need to tell Bo Nix to start actually playing like a real NFL quarterback, and tell Sean Payton to quit conducting himself like a coward during in-game interviews, because we know what type of a coward Sean Payton is. And you might actually do something. Interesting turn of events in the AFC West with that game. And a couple of other ones before I wrap this up. It was the Rams over the Seahawks. Tough game, but for the Seahawks, red zone field goals is going to cost you ball games. And you have 2 turnovers inside your own territory, like Sam Darnold had 2 of his 4 interceptions. You're begging for a loss. That's what happened. The Rams defense shut down Sam Darnold and made life terrible for him. And when the Seattle offense got going, they couldn't do anything with it. I mean, only one touchdown inside the red zone out of, I think, it's 4 or 5 possessions. I mean, if you're going to be in the red zone and you settle for field goals, you're begging for a loss, unless, of course, it's a tie game and you're getting the game-winning field goal. But the Seahawks should be kicking themselves after this one. And I like what Ernest Jones had to say about this team, because they scolded Sam Darnold. And we know the quarterback Sam Darnold has been in his career. We talk about his years, of course, with Carolina, the Jets, and at times at Minnesota last season. Basically saying, we lost as a team. And that's what he did. I encourage you to listen to the press conference of Ernest Jones after that game. It was certainly a terrific one, summed up word for word. I encourage you guys to listen to that. But for the Rams, Matthew Stafford continues his MVP level play. I mean, the guy's a miracle right now. I mean, if you want to put this guy's favorite as an MVP, put it, because he's showing everyone he still has it, even at this advanced age. Rams has found a way to win. Sam Darnold just went back to Sam Darnold for one game, 4 interceptions. The two of them by the standout Cam Kinchins. Of course, the Rams converted 2 of those interceptions to 14 points. Points of turnovers, of course, is always going to be a premium, especially in divisional matchups where games are coming down to the wire, like what took place yesterday with these 2. That was a difference. Big win for LA. Seattle is here to stay, despite the loss. But they'll probably have the rematch in Seattle in a few weeks, and I think Seattle will take that. But Seattle's here to stay. Rams are still a favorite, and they didn't look all that great winning this game. But they are 8-2, and that's all that matters. We'll see what happens with them down the line. And back to the AFC North, I talked about Pittsburgh winning and still holding on. It was the Ravens last night over the Browns. Lamar Jackson got beat up quite good. But the real story here was the Ravens stayed committed to the run. Derrick Henry and even Keaton Mitchell started to wear down the Browns' defense. And Kyle Hamilton was just a man amongst boys, 3 tackles for loss, the sack. Should have had at least 2 interceptions. And of course, everybody claiming talking about this Shedeur Sanders debut, not even worth talking about, because the guy was absolutely a corpse. The Ravens, everyone, I'm like everyone. I think they're going to come back to win this division, because I think they have a favorable schedule. But there's still something missing, and they better find it quick, because they're lucky at the moment that even though Pittsburgh's 6-4, they have a tougher schedule of the two. They still have to play each other twice. It may come down to the finale in Pittsburgh, week 18. But Baltimore needs to get up and get at it. I mean, you're winning games. Okay, you're winning games. That's good. But to go to be where you really want to be, you got to be better. Because you got to play the Steelers twice. You also have a home game against the Patriots, and we know how good the Patriots are so far this season. And of course, we know the stunner to everyone. So Baltimore did what they had to do to get the win. Of course, the fake tush push by Mark Andrews, who scored a winning touchdown. On there was, of course, a great block by Pat Ricard, one of the better blocking backs in the NFL. Actually, a throwback to the old fullback position than what it was is who Ricard is. And Baltimore just found a way to win. At this point, right now, just find ways to win. But if you want to go do better than this, you got to find a way to be better because you still have the 2 games against Pittsburgh and, of course, one against New England with the Patriots, who are probably going to be fighting for the division title and the top AFC seed. But in the long run, they'll find a way to be fine, but it's got to start real soon. It's all the rest to it. So that covers the NFL segment. Lots to touch on, and it was crazy. I had to touch on some of the things I had to touch on because everyone wants to get involved in something that they shouldn't. I said along, you want to drag me into it? Have at it. You're going to like what I'm going to have to say. Case closed. Now we go to the world of boxing, and it was an historical moment that took place 53 years ago at Madison Square Garden. It was the beginnings of a lightweight trilogy between Puerto Rico's Esteban DeJesus and, of course, the iconic Roberto Duran. This fight was the first of a trilogy. Duran was a champion. A top challenger was DeJesus, but it was a non-title fight simply because Duran's affiliation with one of the military leaders of Panama at the time, Omar Torrijos, who won his first title defense in being Panama, which happened 2 months after this. So Duran agreed to it, and Esteban DeJesus agreed to it, weirdly. And both fighters weighed over the lightweight limit. I think Duran was 138. DeJesus was like 135 and a half or something like that. And Esteban DeJesus, maybe an underrated all-time great Latino fighter, doesn't get talked about enough among the great all-time Puerto Ricans. I'll touch on that at the end of the segment. A skilled lightweight, very slick, knows his way around the ring, has a great counter left hook and a good counter punch. And Duran found this out immediately because it was 30 seconds into the fight. The perfectly timed left hook, alpha missed by Duran, and Duran's on the canvas. And that was the epitome of what Esteban DeJesus was, the ability to make you miss and counter with that perfect left hook. And he floored Duran 30 seconds in. Duran got up, did all he can to fight through, had his moments where he came on, but it was the precision counter punching, the precision timings of the left hook, and his ability to be slick in that ring what made Esteban DeJesus the winner of the first of this trilogy. Esteban DeJesus, standout fighter out of Puerto Rico. Not talked about enough, maybe because of his off the ring transgressions. I'll touch on those in a second. But you talk about a guy who's won 57 fights and was a world champion at some point, especially when he beat Jutsu Ishimatu back in 1976. So he did ascend to a higher level, has quality wins over fighters like Edwin Viret and Ray Lampkin, who he defeated twice. 2 guys who Roberto Duran also beat. Take that for what it's worth. Knew his way around the ring. It was as good as anyone in that lightweight division and from the Latino community at that time. And he gave Roberto Duran more than Duran bargained for on this particular night, largely because Duran fought the fight that was tailor-made for DeJesus. I mean, he manages the ring, counters the left hook, step aside, make you miss, make you pay. And he did that. He did everything to keep Duran off guard and off balance throughout the fight. Duran had his moments where he came on. Actually, a couple times in the later rounds had Esteban DeJesus hurt. But problem was at that point, it was a case of too little, too late. And that's why Esteban DeJesus escaped with a unanimous decision at Madison Square Garden in the first of this trilogy. It was trying to be an epic trilogy as the 2 other fights went on. So I'll touch on those down the line. Now, we talk about Esteban DeJesus. Maybe his biggest misfortune is what he's remembered for outside of the ring, where as his career dwindled down, especially after he lost to Duran in the 3rd fight to clean out that lightweight division. Got hooked with substance abuse, committed a murder, wound up in prison for life. It was eventually, while he was in prison, contracted with the AIDS virus. And of course, he was granted a conditional release by the prison that he was in Puerto Rico for as long as he was able to find himself at AIDS clinic to try and find a cure or resolution for the disease he had. But it wasn't meant to be, as he died shortly after his release. And there's an image before he passed of Roberto Duran visiting his rival Esteban DeJesus at the hospital, giving him one last hug in one of the most touching moments maybe ever. And that's probably the misfortune for Esteban DeJesus, who was a phenomenal fighter. We talk about the great fighters that come out of Puerto Rico. We need to start mentioning his name more because he was certainly as good as anyone. I mean, he had the style that could give anyone problems in that era. His resume was as good as anyone. He did win a world title, but I said the only lightweight to beat Duran at Duran's tenure as a lightweight. I'll talk about Duran's tenure as a lightweight in a second, which tells you what Esteban DeJesus was, and was certainly a great fighter at lightweight. I mean, a couple times challenged for the fighter of the year in the 70s, and was just, a beauty to watch. We talk about some of the great fighters out of Puerto Rico, Wilfredo Gomez, Wilfred Benitez, Felix Trinidad, Hector Camacho, Miguel Cotto, among others. Esteban DeJesus is in that conversation. I mean, he had a 2-year run as a lightweight champ. I mean, he beat a tough Japanese fighter, Gus Ishimatsu, that nobody wanted parts of for the longest time. DeJesus said, I'll fight him and I'll beat him. And he did. So that's what the legacy of Esteban DeJesus in the ring was. Said maybe the biggest misfortune is what he's remembered for outside of the ring. And that was where everything came to an end for him when he passed in 89. I said the image of Roberto Duran visiting DeJesus and giving him the big hug before DeJesus passed, still something that's, I know it's sort of bothers Roberto Duran to this day. He talked about it because he didn't know that was going to be the end. But Esteban DeJesus had his crowning moment on this day 53 years ago at Madison Square Garden, beating the iconic Roberto Duran, and Duran's only loss as a lightweight. And we talk about Duran's run as a lightweight. Now we're isolating it just the lightweight division here, which is really what Duran's legacy is. 1978 Fighter of the Year, widely regarded as a fighter of the decades in the 70s, although there was no official distinction for that award. Most people think it belongs to Roberto Duran, and it's got a strong case for it. We think about what he did as a lightweight. I mean, he beat Ken Buchanan to win one of the titles, and he had successful title defenses against guys like Edwin Violette, Ray Lampkin, among others. Beat DeJesus in the second and third fights of their trilogies to cap off the lightweight division, which essentially was a clean out because when Duran and DeJesus fought, they were the champions of the 2-belt era, and Duran won both titles, and in the third fight just dusted off DeJesus. It was probably his finest performance and his finest hour as a lightweight. That's what we had when we talk about Roberto Duran as a lightweight. And of course, some people give him the distinction of the greatest lightweight ever. Again, what's your criteria? I'll investigate it down the line. I'll probably talk about it in due time. But you can probably give him that distinction because, well, here's one thing people forget when he was as a lightweight. He found ways to evolve as a fighter. He wasn't just a pure straight-ahead brawler because that was his mistake when he lost it to Jesus the first time. He evolved this game. He evolved as a fighter, ring generalship, skill, and brought more to the table than just that machismo Latino fighter coming out of Panama City, Panama. And as a lightweight, he was a problem. And no lightweight touches this guy in the ring. We talk about the proverbial head-to-head competition because this guy was a total package. And we talk about that run in the 70s. This guy had 72 fights in the 70s. He was 71-1 in the decade of the 70s. Think about it. 71-1 from 1970 to 1979. That's why he might have the distinction. We talk about some of the guys in that conversation with Roberto Duran as the greatest lightweight ever. Of course, way before that, a couple guys, Joe Gans and Benny Leonard, definitely that much. Some have Benny Leonard as the greatest lightweight of all time. Resume and career accolades speak for itself. Of course, Henry Armstrong, mentioned the only fighter to win world titles simultaneously in 3 weight classes, featherweight to welterweight, then back down to lightweight. He's definitely in that conversation. Pernell Whitaker, when they went to the 3-belt era, wiped that clean effortlessly. Greg Haugen, Jose Luis Ramirez, Azuma Nelson, and Juan Nazario. That was the tip of the iceberg. That put him in that conversation. We talk about great Puerto Rican fighters. Another standout, Carlos Ortiz, in that conversation. Going way back, one of the original multi-title winners, Tony Canzanori, also in that conversation. Won multiple, couple titles simultaneously. One of the first multi-division title winners when winning multi-division titles was of significance, and Tony Canzonori was one of the first to do that. Another guy at that time, Barney Ross, just like Canzonori and Armstrong, multiple division world champion at a time when it meant something. And you throw some guys like Julio Cesar Chavez, who wiped out the lightweights, especially after he pasted Edwin Rosario and boxed Jose Luis Ramirez's ears off. And a fighter way back when named Lou Ambers, who beat Armstrong for the lightweight title and gave Armstrong some tough fights. He's also in that all-time great lightweight conversation. And of course, Nicaragua's Alexis Arguello, one of the kingpins south of the welterweight division, probably the most accomplished of that era. Maybe not the distinction like guys like Duran or others, but certainly accomplished. It was a thing of beauty during his time also. And all of that, maybe Roberto Duran certainly has the distinction of the greatest lightweight of all time. To have it over all those guys and have everyone think Duran would beat those guys in the hypotheticals, that should tell you the legacy of the lightweight division of Roberto Duran. Of course, we know what happened to him after the lightweight division and so on. But this was about his legacy isolated in the lightweight division. And I said, this was the Duran legacy. The greatest lightweight ever. And the most accomplished fighter of the 70s. When you think about going 71-1 and just cleaning out the house in that lightweight division, that should tell you what Roberto Duran was made of. And you say what you want afterwards, but it doesn't deter the fact the guy maybe stamped his legacy as a lightweight. And when I touch on later on his third fight with Esteban DeJesus, it's going to be revealed as probably his greatest performance and his finest hour ever. That supplanted him arguably as a top 20 all-time great fighter, pound for pound all-time. And maybe distinguish him when you talk about the Latino community as the greatest Latino fighter of all time. And that's what Roberto Duran was. Yeah, a lot of you guys get misconstrued with his legacy, but a lot of you guys were even born when this guy just ruled the roost in the 70s and had the distinction of the best fighter pound for pound. And this is before pound for pound rankings became a big thing among the magazines and across all the shows and everything. Roberto Duran wore that distinction of the best fighter in the world. Think about the guys that came through in the 70s at that time, and you wear that distinction, it says tons about how great you were. That was Roberto Duran in a nutshell. So to touch on this, again, it was 53 years ago. The finest hour for Esteban DeJesus when he beat the iconic, great Roberto Duran by unanimous decision. It was a non-title fight due to political reasons that Roberto Duran was in the middle of. Roberto Duran just stood by his word and gave it. But it doesn't deter the fact this was Esteban DeJesus' finest hour to show the whole world why he's also in the conversation of greatest lightweights and probably the greatest fighter to come out of Puerto Rico with some of the others. I just touched on the legacy of Duran to recap on the legacy of DeJesus. It's simply because this guy, remember for what happened to him outside the ring, but aside the ring, he was a tough fighter for anybody. I mean, he won 50 plus fights and a world title at a time when winning world titles was significant. This will tell you just how great Esteban DeJesus was. Actually, you talk to Roberto Duran, he'll tell you how tough of an hombre Esteban DeJesus was. He'll always put DeJesus on that high pedestal. He always did that. That to tell you the greatness of Esteban DeJesus. As I said, for Duran, the fans today don't even acknowledge what he did as a lightweight, and they should, because that's the Roberto Duran legacy. Is, was, and always will be. To recap some of this show, because I could be late bloomers, I touched on the Jamar Chase suspension. I said all along, if you're defending a man who's spitting on another man, the way Bengals fans and Cincinnati media have defended Jamar Chase, you've reached a new low as a human being in all walks of life. And that's what the Bengals fans and the Cincinnati media have done, defending Jamar Chase. Now, I said Jamar Chase is a top 15 player in the NFL, in my opinion. But to have that distinction and resort to what you did that day raises a lot of questions moving forward. But you're defending a man who's spitting on another man, regardless of the sport or profession. You're every bit the despicable human being that individual is. There's no room for it at all. And I don't know what's going to happen to Jalen Ramsey. I mean, people say he should be suspended. I think he will be. I mean, through a punch. But I'm not even going to get into that because I let that take care of itself first. But I've said this, and this is where I put my time in the fight years to today. I put the two together when it comes to my fight years and what's taking place in Cincinnati with the Bengals fans. And I'll say this I'll try to say this with all due respect, but I don't know if I can give this any respect anymore, given what took place yesterday. When you're surrounded by a bunch of shady people with shady behavior and shady habits, as I was in the fight game, and we had a lot of it. If I followed it, there was a lot of it. The true colors came out. And when you was in it, and you leave that inner circle, and then you see another inner circle that reminds you what you was in, and you see the same type of behaviors you saw then. It was now the Bengals fans and the Cincinnati media compared to my years in the fight years. Your eyes are better prepared because you've seen it before, and now you can prepare for what's coming. That's why I took the stance earlier tonight, because you defend a man who's spitting on another man in that kind of a despicable, disgusting, derogatory, cowardly, and inhuman behavior. It makes you disgusting. It makes you degrading. It makes you cowardly. And that's the end of the game for you, because I can't defend it. If I did that same thing, I'd be scolded to the ashes. Don't try me with anything, Bengals fans or Cincinnati media. Do not try me, because I'll roast you again. Because there's no way you can defend anything that took place yesterday in Pittsburgh. Now, is it a physical game? Of course it's going to be a physical game. It's football. Shannon Sharp once said it. It's football. Of course Jamar Chase is going to get hit. Of course T. Higgins is going to get hit. There are guys in the Steelers team that got hit. There are games all over the place. We see hits. But for you guys, the Bengals fans and the Cincinnati media, to attack the Steelers and the Steelers fans because of what you guys deem as dirty hits by Jalen Ramsey when they were just football plays, but defend a man in Jamar Chase who spits on another man, it says a lot about your character as human beings at the end of the day. And I said this again, I wrap this up. I encourage everyone to Google what took place in the AFC wildcard game in 2015 between these two teams, the fan base of the Bengals, before, during, and after. And you're more than welcome to ask me any questions, because I'll gladly give the answers. I've said this before. I'm not a hard guy to find. I'll gladly answer any question imaginable. But all of this, when we're living, what took place a decade ago in that playoff game between Cincinnati and Pittsburgh, and the rehash, that's the Vontaze Burfict whack Antonio Brown outside the head game. The same game where Bengals fans verbally slandered Ben Roethlisberger and threw objects at him on the field as he was carted off and was cheering his injury in the middle of the game. That's what you need to know about the Bengals fans at the end of the day. And they accused Patrick Mahomes of faking the injury in the 2022 AFC title game. Anybody knows the story of that one? And I can go on a list of why this fan base has simply become just a degrading, cowardly, disgusting, and despicable and inhumane fan base, maybe ever. I don't if you're my best friend and I hear you about spitting on someone, you might be my best friend, but I'm going to rip you a new one, because there's certain lines you don't cross. And when you take the gloves off, once you spit on someone like that and cross that border or that boundary, the gloves are off and all bets are off. And because of it, I don't feel sorry for Jamar Chase getting suspended today. Maybe you can say it was soft. I think it might be a little soft, but it was coming. And we have Bengals fans and those so-called super fans like Drew Garrison and the captain being two of the bigger cowards, accusing Zach Taylor of dry snitching. The evidence was there. The evidence was there that he did it. What am I going to do if I saw, excuse me, what am I going to do when I see a video of someone spitting on another man? Am I going to make excuses? No. The video was there. He spit on the guy, and that's it. I mean, Zach Taylor said he left it to the NFL. What do you want Zach Taylor to do? Pull a gun to Roger Goodell's office and murder him if he did it? That'll make a bigger mess. That's why I quit dealing with cowards like that and despicable human beings like that, because they went to a new low, and it's that low they'll probably never raise from. Good luck down the line, Bengals fans and Cincinnati media. You just stooped to a new level of cowardice that I didn't think you guys were capable of. And it showed today. End of conversation. I'll touch on this more in a couple of days when I get to other things with the NFL. But on that note, I will wrap up this edition of Sir Hunt on X. If those of you missed this show or some of the ones I have in the past, you can catch them on the Apple Podcast, the iHeartRadio, and the Spotify apps. And as always, make self-care your number one priority in all walks of life. You take care of yourself first. All of the good things will come your way. Always focus on you. Always take care of you. That's the only thing that matters. If you don't take care of yourself first, then nothing else is going to matter. Always focus on you. That's what I've had to do. And that's what I'm doing now, watching how the Bengals fans and Cincinnati media stoop to the lowest of lows as human beings. And on that note, I will be back tomorrow night. Until then, have a good rest of the night. Take care of yourselves. God bless, and enjoy the evening.